Have you been married 23 years?
23 years.
4 kids.
Yeah.
And one of your daughter or your son just got married?
Brooklyn just...
It was supposed to be a wedding, an immaculate union between 2 families with names too large to fit inside one room. Yet somewhere between the vows, the flashbulbs, and the rehearsed elegance of a billionaire's ceremony, something cracked. A smile held too long, a gesture that didn't match the occasion, a glance that revealed more than words could hide. What should have been a celebration became a slow, seismic break, felt first in whispers, then in headlines, and finally in the cold absence that echoed across the world. Because behind the beauty, behind the curated glamour, a silent storm was building, one that would test loyalty, legacy, and the fragile alliances that hold famous families together. No one realized it then, but the fracture had already begun, and the wedding was only the spark that exposed everything beneath the surface. What followed would reshape the Beckham name in ways no one expected. The story didn't begin with conflict. It began with 2 legacies standing proudly in their own realms. On one side, the Beckhams, a family polished by decades of public fascination, football royalty, fashion pillars, a union of athletic triumph and pop cultural influence that shaped a generation. Their brand wasn't just strong, it was global currency.
On the other side stood the Peltz family, quiet where the Beckhams were loud, private where the Beckhams were performative. Their influence built not from fame, but from power, forged in boardrooms and investments, operating far above red carpets. 2 empires, 2 philosophies, 2 gravitational forces. When Brooklyn Beckham and Nicola Peltz fell in love, the world celebrated the merging of 2 names. But beneath the excitement was an undeniable truth. When 2 kingdoms join, something must be surrendered. Tradition, identity, or control. Something always shifts. And in this case, the first shift was subtle. A tone, a tension, a careful balancing act where everyone appeared gracious, but no one was entirely at ease. Because when 2 homes are built like fortresses, even a small gesture can shake the walls. And one moment was all it would take to crack the foundation. From the outside, their romance looked effortless, a son of iconic celebrities finding love with a woman raised in extraordinary privilege. 2 worlds that rarely collide, suddenly orbiting each other at high speed. But love in the spotlight comes with its own gravity. Brooklyn, long defined as the Beckham son, began forming a new identity shaped by the woman he adored. Nicola, accustomed to privacy, now stepped into a space where every movement, expression, and outfit was dissected by millions. Their engagement amplified expectations. Behind the affectionate posts and glowing captions lingered an unspoken question. Where would Brooklyn's loyalty ultimately rest? Friends noticed the shift first. He wasn't just in love. He was aligning with Nicola's world, a world offering calm, protection, and a life not dictated by the public performance of the Beckham name. It wasn't rejection, it was redefinition. Yet while the romance blossomed, another storyline quietly formed around them, one that would soon eclipse everything else. Because as the wedding approached, a decision that seemed purely aesthetic would become a symbol of something far deeper. Every wedding has its signature moment, but here the dress became more than attire. It became a declaration. Reports circulated. Whispers grew. Would Nicola wear a gown designed by Victoria Beckham, the celebrated fashion force with global prestige, or would she choose an entirely different path? When the announcement arrived, the world felt it. Valentino, not Beckham. A choice elegant on its own, but heavy with subtext. Declining a design from her mother-in-law wasn't a simple preference. It was an identity statement, a declaration of independence, a refusal to be absorbed into the Beckham aesthetic machine. Explanations were offered, polite and carefully worded, but symbols speak louder than statements. Within families built on public image, clothing is not just fashion, it is allegiance. And this gesture landed like a stone in calm water. Ripples spread across both households. But this was only the beginning. Because the wedding day itself would deliver a moment so startling, it shifted everything from tension to rupture. Weddings are full of rituals. The first dance, the speeches, the traditions that mark a new chapter. But sometimes these rituals expose truths no one wants to acknowledge. According to stories that circulated widely, the energy shifted during the first dance, a moment meant to belong entirely to the bride and groom. It should have been sacred, unshared by no one. Yet when another figure stepped into that space, the room felt it. Some saw enthusiasm, others an intrusion. In families where influence is instinctive, even a small step can feel like a claim. And then came the moment that defined the night. A dedication from a performer close to the Beckhams, a tribute traditionally meant for the bride, redirected toward Victoria. On a night where the bride should have been untouchable in her radiance, the shift felt charged, a reminder of the hierarchy that existed before the couple ever said "I do." For Nicola, it wasn't merely awkward, it was illuminating, a sign that the spotlight she expected to share with her husband still bent naturally toward someone else. And while the guests danced, laughed, and toasted, a quiet realization settled over the new couple, one that would soon guide their every choice. Because after the wedding, the distance wouldn't simply grow, it would become unmistakable. In most families, missing an event is an inconvenience. Here, it became a headline. When Brooklyn and Nicola were absent from major Beckham gatherings, especially milestone ones, the pattern became impossible to ignore. To the public, to the media, to the Beckhams themselves, a missed celebration wasn't interpreted as a scheduling conflict. It was read as a message. And for a family whose brand is built on unity, the message felt sharp. Silence, when placed on a public stage, becomes amplified. Photos without Brooklyn, dinners without Nicola, celebrations where two familiar faces were missing. Their absence became a presence, more powerful than attendance could ever be. To observers, this wasn't drifting apart. It was stepping away, deliberately, quietly, repeatedly. But behind the optics lay another truth, more powerful than emotion. Because the balance of influence between the families was never even, and that disparity was shaping everything that followed. The Beckham name is iconic, but the Peltz empire is vast. Behind the romance was an unspoken reality. Brooklyn hadn't just married for love. He had entered a world of resources, privacy, and structural power far beyond what even his famous parents could provide. With that shift came a new gravitational pull, a new center of belonging, a realm where he was not a public figure carrying a legacy, but a husband living in a quieter, more protected sphere. The contrast was stark, and for a young man raised under constant attention, that difference mattered.
Some insiders suggested the power dynamic quietly reversed, that Brooklyn, once defined by the spotlight of his last name, now found comfort in a world where the spotlight was optional. For Victoria and David, who had spent decades mastering public control, this shift was something they could not counter. Not with fame, not with narrative, not with influence. Because when legacy meets limitless wealth, the hierarchy changes, and not always in predictable ways. As private tension simmered, the public spun its own version of events. Unfollows on social media became evidence. Interview moments became clues. Paparazzi photos turned into theories. Fans formed sides. Media shaped arcs of rivalry. Each gesture, each silence, fed the narrative. In time, the truth mattered less than the story people wanted to believe. Some cast the couple as fiercely independent. Others framed the Beckhams as protective parents. Still others suggested deeper misunderstandings. The noise grew louder than the reality. Even small gestures, like a missing comment or an unreturned tag, fueled speculation. The dynasty that once appeared united now looked divided, and the world watched every shift like a slow-moving saga. But while the outside world debated alliances, something quieter was forming out of view, something that would determine the next chapter. Every family reaches a moment when expectations must be rewritten, when the old order no longer aligns with the new.
And for the Beckhams and the Peltzes, that moment arrived without dramatic statements or grand gestures. It appeared in subtler ways, a softened tone, a polite smile, a willingness to share space again, even briefly. Reports surfaced of small steps toward reconciliation, of efforts made behind the scenes to ease the tension. Not sweeping, not perfect, but present. And presence matters.
Yet beneath these gestures remains the truth that Brooklyn and Nicola are building a world of their own, one where their decisions lead and the expectations of two dynasties follow. Whether bridges are rebuilt or distance remains, the couple has already reshaped the structure around them. The Beckhams learned a difficult lesson. Influence cannot secure loyalty. Legacy cannot dictate love. Control cannot replace acceptance. Families evolve. Children form their own gravity. And sometimes the next chapter of a dynasty is written not by tradition, but by courage to step beyond it. The question that remains is simple yet impossible to ignore. Is this the closing of a chapter, or the beginning of a quieter, more complicated story, still unfolding behind the scenes?